Can trying to stay safe actually make you more afraid? In Kafka's The Metamorphosis, we'll explore how the pursuit of safety can lead to our deepest fears. Written by Franz Kafka, a master of surreal and unsettling fiction, The Metamorphosis is one of his most famous works. Published in 1915, it tells the story of Gregor Samsa, a man whose sudden and mysterious transformation into a giant insect forces his family to confront their deepest anxieties. Gregor Samsa's transformation is sudden and horrifying. One day, he's a hardworking traveling salesman and the sole breadwinner for his family. The next, he wakes up as a giant insect, trapped in a body that disgusts him and everyone around him. This shocking, unexplained change leaves readers to wrestle with its deep implications. For Gregor, this transformation kicks off a nightmare. His once familiar world becomes strange, and his human needs and desires are overshadowed by his grotesque new form. He can no longer work, provide for his family, or even communicate effectively. His identity, once tied to being a provider, is now shattered. At first, Gregor can't believe what's happening. He worries about missing work, how his boss will react, and the financial strain his absence will put on his family. Despite his horrific new form, his thoughts remain stuck on his responsibilities and the mundane details of his human life. This mix of his insect form and human concerns highlights the absurdity and tragedy of this situation. As Gregor tries to adapt to his new reality, his family's reaction speaks volumes. His parents and sister are horrified and repelled by his appearance. They lock him in his room, hoping to protect themselves from seeing him and facing the reality of his transformation. This physical isolation mirrors Gregor's growing emotional and psychological isolation as he becomes increasingly cut off from the world he once knew. Through Gregor's transformation, Kafka explores themes of alienation and identity. Gregor's new form forces him into complete dependence, flipping the dynamics of his previous life, where his family relied on him. This shift not only challenges Gregor's sense of self, but also exposes the fragile foundations of familial love and loyalty. As we dive deeper into Kafka's The Metamorphosis, we'll see how Gregor's transformation is more than just a physical change. It reveals the hidden fears and latent cruelty within his family, setting the stage for examining how the pursuit of safety, both physical and emotional, can lead to deep fear and ultimately dehumanization. Gregor's transformation is a turning point for his whole family. The initial shock gives way to fear and disgust. His parents and sister, who once relied on him, now see him as a monstrous burden. Their first reaction is to lock Gregor in his room to feel safe and normal. This isolation, meant to protect them from the horror of his new form, also highlights their deeper fear, the fear of the unknown and uncontrollable. As time goes on, the family's interactions with Gregor become more distant. His sister, Greta, initially shows compassion by bringing him food and cleaning his room. However, her fear and disgust soon overwhelm her. Gregor's father reacts with aggression, attempting to reassert control through violent outbursts driven by his fear of what Gregor represents and the disruption to their lives. The father's actions prioritize the family's perceived safety and reputation, even at the cost of harming his own son. The mother is torn between her maternal instincts and overwhelming repulsion. She wants to care for Gregor, but can't reconcile her love for her son with the monstrosity he's become. Her constant weeping and breakdowns show the psychological toll that Gregor's transformation takes on the family, turning their home into a place of constant anxiety and sorrow. This reaction from Gregor's family highlights a key theme in Kafka's work: the destructive power of fear when it's allowed to fester. The family's attempts to create a safe environment by isolating Gregor lead to more fear and tension in the household. Instead of fostering understanding and compassion, their actions breed resentment and cruelty. Through this lens, Kafka shows the paradox of safety and fear. The family's pursuit of safety through isolation and rejection only amplifies their fear, leading to a breakdown of family bonds and a slide into dehumanization. Gregor, once the pillar of the household, becomes a mirror reflecting their darkest fears and ugliest impulses. Consider subscribing, it helps motivate me to keep creating. Gregor's confinement to his room, meant to keep the family safe, quickly shows itself to be a double-edged sword. The more they isolate him, the more their fear grows. This paradox between safety and fear is a key theme in Kafka's Metamorphosis. Gregor's family locks him in his room, thinking this will protect them from the horror of his transformation. The locked door becomes a barrier between Gregor and the rest of the household, symbolizing their denial and avoidance. But instead of feeling secure, this act of isolation only makes their dread worse. Just seeing Gregor, even briefly, triggers intense horror and revulsion. By trying to shield themselves from this new reality, they only make their anxieties worse. Isolation, rather than making the family feel secure, adds to their stress. They live in constant fear of what Gregor has become. This fear shows up in different ways: the father's violent outbursts, the mother's emotional breakdowns, and Greta's growing resentment and cruelty. The home, once a place of comfort and safety, becomes a battleground of unspoken anxieties and suppressed fears. For Gregor, the isolation is equally devastating. Confined to his room, he's cut off from the world and life he once knew. His physical isolation mirrors his psychological and emotional isolation. He's no longer part of his family, no longer a provider, and no longer seen as human. This profound loneliness eats away at his spirit, leading to a deep sense of despair. Kafka uses Gregor's isolation to show the dehumanizing effects of fear and the pursuit of safety. The family's choice to isolate Gregor is driven by their desire to protect themselves, but it strips Gregor of his humanity and dignity. He becomes an object of fear instead of a member of the family. This change isn't just physical, but also social and emotional. The paradox here is clear. The more the family tries to protect themselves, the more they fall into fear. Their actions, meant to keep their peace of mind, create an environment of constant tension and dread. This reflects a broader societal issue where the pursuit of safety can lead to excluding and dehumanizing those who are different or seen as a threat. When we look at these themes in the Metamorphosis, we see a reflection of real-world issues. Societies often react to perceived threats by isolating and ostracizing those who are different, whenever due to illness, appearance, or behavior. This reaction, meant to create safety, often leads to greater fear and division. Kafka's portrayal of Gregor's isolation and the family's escalating fear serves as powerful commentary on the human condition. It makes us think about its deeper philosophical implications. This paradox reminds me of the existential themes Jean-Paul Sartre talked about. Sartre argued that humans are condemned to be free, meaning we have to navigate life and make choices without any clear guidelines. This freedom can be overwhelming and scary, making us seek safety in social norms and roles. However, as Kafka shows, these attempts at security can trap us in situations that create fear and alienation. Sartre's idea of bad faith is particularly relevant here. Bad faith means denying our own freedom and responsibility by conforming to societal expectations. In the Metamorphosis, Gregor's family shows bad faith by sticking to conventional ideas of normalcy and security, even as their actions dehumanize Gregor. Their fear-driven compliance with social norms ultimately leads to their moral and emotional decay. By locking Gregor away, they think they're maintaining their safety, but in reality, they are just submitting to a deeper existential fear and losing their humanity. Building on this idea, Albert Camus' philosophy of the absurd offers another way to view Gregor's predicament. Camus described the absurd as the conflict between our desire for meaning and the indifference of the universe. Gregor's unexplained transformation embodies this absurdity. His sudden change and the family's desperate efforts to maintain normalcy highlight the irrational nature of existence. Camus argued that recognizing the absurdity of life should lead us to a state of revolt, continuing to search for meaning and live authentically despite the chaos. In the Metamorphosis, the family's reaction can be seen as an attempt to impose order on a chaotic situation. Their isolation of Gregor is a futile effort to restore normalcy and reject the absurd reality of his transformation. However, instead of embracing the absurd and finding new meaning, they retreat into fear and denial. This retreat not only isolates Gregor, but also alienates them from their own humanity. Both Sartre and Camus emphasize the importance of facing our fears and embracing life's uncertainties. Kafka's story vividly shows the consequences of failing to do so. Gregor's family, in their pursuit of safety, end up creating an environment filled with fear and dehumanization. Their actions serve as a warning about the dangers of avoiding the challenges posed by freedom and absurdity. Kafka's story invites us to reflect on our own lives. Are we, like Gregor's family, seeking safety in ways that ultimately lead to more fear and division? Are we sacrificing our humanity and empathy in the name of security? By looking at these questions, we can better understand the delicate balance between seeking safety and maintaining our compassion and connection.